in the
Wow.
house. All right, Amy. Amy, do you want to kick this thing off? Or I'll kick it off and then hand it over to you to review some things, and then we'll kind of toss it to Catherine, who's going to MC our journey here today on this call. So, welcome everybody. This is recorded as always. Our monthly education sessions are posted on YouTube after they happen. So if somebody in your company misses it, definitely we have a really good backlog of education there. Real quick, we start all of our meetings kind of reviewing our mission. So our mission here at PromoStandards is we collaborate to create industry-leading open standards. Important part of the mission there that enable industry participants to improve customer experience, reduce transaction friction, and effectively execute their digital strategy. So ultimately, many of you have gone through all of these with us. I guess as a show, you can raise your hand or in the Q&A if you've attended all 12 education sessions this year. If I've done it, Amy's done it, Jessica's done it, I know that. But if you've attended them all, I don't know, raise your hand in the chat and Jessica will mark it down and maybe we'll do something special for you and at the Tech Summit coming up. But yeah, it's a grind. It's not, oh, look at that, Mr. Schmidt at ASB attended every single one. He's the only one who's done them all. I love it. Well, thank you for attending every single one. It's not always easy to figure out what we're going to talk about each week, but I think this year our focus has been getting through the standards themselves and making sure we have a document library. And many times in my calls throughout the week, I hear people saying, "Hey, I got to go back and reference that, the PPC one or the product data one." So at this point, we've almost built out a library for every single standard that exists today, and it's just see in the future, what kind of really spend next year focusing on some of the new stuff. So with that said, I'm gonna turn over to Amy. Amy's gonna roll through some of our I guess plans that we have in the short term. Some exciting things coming up for Tech Summit, and then we're gonna hand it over to Catherine, who's gonna walk us through a little bit of this adventure here today. So it's all you, Amy.
Thanks, John, and thanks for the quick update on education. Let me talk a little bit more about what our plans are for 2024 around education in a little bit. But it's so exciting. It's This year has been full of the 2023 Tech Summit. We did a virtual hackathon, which will celebrate our winners at the event in February. So many good things. And then now we're in the midst of wrapping up the planning for the 2024 Tech Summit in St. Pete this year down at Don Cesar. So we're really excited about it. You'll notice that we put up a new agenda. So if you haven't checked out promostandards.org recently for the new agenda, please take a look because we moved some things around. This is still the high level. So we have 3 keynotes, one each day. We have the round table, supplier implementation tables, the hackathon presentations, and along with our new service introduction. So we're almost set on our panelists and our hosts for the breakout sessions, but we're still looking for people to help host a roundtable with a current topic. So if you're interested in serving and volunteering for one or both of the roundtable sessions and just hosting a table where members can come together and talk, please reach out to Jessica, or you can reach out to me or Becky. We're coordinating that and kind of wrapping that up hopefully by the end of the month because we're running out of year.
Amy, I know that I don't see it on here, but we just added a third keynote, didn't we?
We
That's
did, and it'll be coming out on social media probably the first week of January. Jana Markowitz is going to be speaking with us on the third day about how projects fail. She has worked in organizational design and consults for companies that are going through IT and large project migrations. So we're lucky to have
so
her on our third day.
I, I think for those of you who've tech summited with us for,
Mhm.
Promo Stands for 2 years, but the industry for 7, 8 years. This is always, I'd say this is the biggest struggle we've had every year has been landing keynotes, the right for the content. And I think this year, knock on wood, I think this is like the grand slam of keynotes. We've vetted every single one of these. We have everywhere from Andrew Larson on the highly technical dev side. We have Janet on the very high level project management and how to, make sure projects don't fail. And then sitting right in the middle, we have Stephen, who's his background's in software engineering. Now he's a lawyer. He actually consults with PromoStandards from time to time, but he's one of the most prominent cyber attorneys in the country. So we've hit all three angles and really covered our bases. And for me, I'm the most excited about this lineup. I think we, made sure that we went and got a third keynote that was important for us to make sure that we covered all of our bases in terms of content. So, I don't often get excited about speakers at events, and this one I'm, very much plan on, engaging in all three of these talks. So
Right.
I think everybody else, if you're not, there, it's going to be awesome.
One of the things that Stephen offered to talk about kind of as we were going through some of his content is that he's going to be able to talk to legal cases and legality around using AI now. It's starting to come up in his day-to-day practice. So it'll be exciting to see what's happening in February because it changes so fast. Also want to give a shout out to our sponsors. We have a few sponsorships remaining. You'll start seeing it on social media. Just reach out to them and say thank you. A lot of what we do, being able to bring in the keynotes, having, our events and giving opportunity for us to network. And, whether it's the dine arounds or it's the opening reception or it's the networking breaks, it's really our sponsors that help us do that. And then all of the swag that we'll have there for our product sponsors, they donate that. So if you have a chance, you're meeting with them in your day-to-day jobs, just say thank you for that. It's much appreciated. As John mentioned earlier, I don't know, John, if you want to talk a little bit more about these.
Yeah.
These are the things that we'll continue to do next year in 2024. So we're excited to keep these going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everybody knows third Tuesday of every month. Here we are. It snuck up on us this month. It's kind of an early one, but we're still committed to that. I think it's an important piece to make sure it's how you can stay in touch with what PromoStandards is doing, but it's also how we can get that message back to the membership. So we're going to continue this. Obviously, Tech Summit's a huge, huge, huge part of our education initiatives and just general community initiative. From the hackathon. We're committed to keeping that virtual. I think it works well because we can get international teams and cross-functional teams assemble if we were trying to do it all in person. So that's going to be a pillar for what we do as far as education. I think we'll kind of talk about this earlier. As we go forward here, I think PromoStandards is committed to more mentorship and onboarding. Members as they onboard, tagging them up with board members and kind of going through that process. Like I mentioned earlier, this is all on YouTube. So some of it gets dated, obviously, but as far as the content goes, the standards, I think there's at this point, there's probably 24 plus hour-long sessions on education. So if you ever have, that's always going to be there as a archive. And then, I think you'll see this from Jay. I think we're going to focus heavily on both the J side of it, which is best practices, and then the standards committee side of it, and make sure that as we roll out new education sessions next year, we keep them in tandem with rolling out new standards and then coming right behind them and rolling out best practice for each of those standards. Right. So we'll make sure we stay on top of that.
Complete documentation too. And
yeah,
and all the fun stuff that goes along with that. So
yeah, I think you've seen it. Like the document, I had to dig up the inventory 1.2.1 documentation recently. And it's gross compared to how our documentation is now. I think we have more use cases. There's more explanations for the field. So, as we've matured from the education standpoint and the best practices, we've gotten that feedback from the community. So, I think you're going to see more and more of that as we go. And I think you're going to ultimately, we'll get into more of online style documentation, more of that like Swagger type documentation as we go forward. But yeah, that's it from the education side.
Then a quick marketing update, a lot of things that we started this year, or we continued from last year. We started letters from the chair, blogs, member spotlights, and committee spotlights. So if you've been a member and we've done a spotlight for you, thank you for participating. You get this long survey that you have to fill out to get that going. So, and if we haven't gotten to you yet, don't worry. We're going to be cycling through all of our members for member spotlights on all our social media. So keep an eye out for that. As far as next year, what we're going to add are volunteer kits and new member kits, and then customized web content for each member type. So you go to the website, hey, I'm a supplier. What do I need to know? And then you'll have all that in one place instead of digging around different places for that. So that'll be part of our enhanced member journey next year. Also, we're going to be having a quick get together on Tuesday, January 16th, from 12 to 3 in our PromoStandards suite at PPI Expo. So come and see us. We're going to have lunch served from 12 to 3. You can just stop in, hang out, chat, stay the whole time if you'd like. Other than that, you can come and go in the suite whenever you need to. You can just set up an appointment with Jessica. She's keeping the calendar if you'd like to have an actual business meeting in there. And if not, you just want to hang, we'll have people there most of the time. So feel free to reach out. It'll be a fun time. And I think that's all that I had for an update, a quick update on the marketing and membership info.
All right, so who turn it over to next? This
Yeah, before you guys are off the hot seat, just one question that came through in the chat. And John, I don't know whether you keep these stats off the top of your head anymore about how many endpoints we now have live.
So I guessed. So I am 450 is the number of suppliers. How many endpoints? I'll get that number here shortly. So I guess might give me till 3 o'clock. I'll get that answer.
Till 3 o'clock. Oh, and Jessica just reminded me there is a sign up for the Vegas lunch so we know how many to prepare for. So if you're going to stop by anytime during that period, please sign up. And then also PromoStandards People of the Year nominations. Jessica's going to repost the link in Slack. Please nominate people. They don't necessarily have to be a member, but it's just someone that's out there that's promoting PromoStandards in our industry and doing some really cool things with it. So feel free to nominate people. We're looking for a supplier, a distributor, and a service provider. So if you know any of those, please nominate people. And we'll be doing awards at the Tech Summit.
Awesome. So the Standards Committee has been super busy this year. I'm going to pass it over to Stephen to give an update on that.
All right. Yes, we have got two of the endpoints changed up to 2.0. That's both order status and order shipment notification. 3 all new standards are in the works right now. That's order management, which is actually going to allow for the communication back and forth between the distributor and the supplier on orders. We're going to have a remittance where distributors can actually send in how to handle the money that they've sent in to the supplier and have that extra piece of communication, and company info. So the suppliers are going to be able to have a way to send back if they are a woman-owned business or if they have any other certifications, as well as their address and their contact points. And currently also being worked on is a revamp of PPC. So PPC 2.0 is one of the big standards that we're looking into, and it's in its early stages, but look forward to more of that coming out.
All right, so I'm curious, so that's a giant like teaser, PPC 2.0, because many people are very interested in that. Like, what's the biggest thing? I can put you on the spot here. What's the biggest thing you're trying to solve for in PPC 2.0?
Making it smaller.
Yes, I love it. Okay, I think everybody will rejoice, because I think I was looking at one of our responses on like the Gildan 500 or 5,000 the other day, and it was like, I don't know, good like 5 megs in text that came back for just a PPC response. So that would be
We all
amazing.
love
So.
giant payloads, don't we, John?
It's like, I don't know why this thing times out, but maybe because there's like a gig of data coming across. So
yeah, that underscores the feedback loop working with our members. So when that was originally designed, the idea was that you're going to be downloading that, you're going to be caching it, storing it locally, right? Very traditional model. In practice, some creative consumers of it said, we're going to use the endpoint as the cache, and we're going to call it like we're calling a regular API. And so through that feedback, and it wasn't going away, even when we educated people, no, this is how you use it, people weren't changing their behavior. So at the end of the day, the standards work to evolve. And that's the whole organization and the standards committee hearing loud and clear from the membership and finding ways to make the standards even stronger. And so that's a biggie for PPC 2.0. Good example of it.
Awesome. Another committee that has had a lot to do this year has been nominations. For a bit of change happening from a governance perspective. Mike, do you want to give some color on that?
Sure. Yeah, the nominating committee this year, I think it hasn't been posted in Slack yet, but the new slate of board members for next year has been approved by the advisory voting members. It includes 2 new folks from outside what was the original kind of group of founders from years and years and years ago. And that, make sure I get it right, it's Daniel Becker from CODIS and Dustin Downing are joining the board in 2024. The nominating committee gets together kind of starting in the middle of the year to try and ensure that the board reflects both participation from different companies and has a diversity of voices and people on it. Added for this coming year, as part of the nominating committee, we're going to be re-looking at the bylaws and bringing to the board, I'll say, certain things that were put into the bylaws to be talked about whether those things should change. So for those of you who've been around for a while, you may remember a couple of years ago, there were some rules about the percentage of board members who could be suppliers, distributors, and service providers. And that was changed 2 years ago to bring all 3 groups onto equal footing. And so it's time for us to relook at the bylaws and see if there's anything else we want to, as a board and as advisory members, change about the bylaws and how we do things and how the group is made up. So that's what happened this past year and what's going to be happening next year for us.
We're deeply appreciative of Mike being our resident bylaws nerd because he keeps us on track.
It's a tough job.
Sometime long ago, I spoke up, and then now I can't get rid of it. So
what it was is Mike's like, let me run that by our legal team, and we're like, all right, this is your
that may be
now.
exactly it.
We're very grateful. Eric, our esteemed chair, wondering if I can put you on the spot to talk a little bit about the board offsite that we did in November.
Sure. Yeah, so every year, we were derailed a little bit with COVID, but every year since our inception as a board, we've worked to get together to do annual planning. And it's no different this past year. So what was really nice is we shifted our annual planning actually into the fall to prepare us for the new year. And so this is an important year for a lot of reasons. The organization is growing. There's a lot happening. We have more people volunteering. And take all that with adoption, and we really need to assess where we're at. And it's something that we would do regularly from time to time, take an assessment of where we're at. So the board met face-to-face in Tampa it was the beginning of November. And in the lead up to that, and if you were at the Tech Summit at the beginning of this year, you heard some inklings of it, is the Strategic Roadmap Committee worked to really understand what's going on with the membership and what's important, and really to try to do it in a data-driven way. And that's what that committee was tasked with doing on behalf of the board, and then be able to present to the board. So this past summer, as a member, you may have seen that, hopefully you saw that a survey went out and you filled out that survey. And we got a lot of great feedback from that. And so we use that leading into the annual planning meeting so that we could, again, take a look at where we were and where we're at and where we're going. And there's some key takeaways from that. Number one is there's every, say, couple, 3 years, there tends to be a realization that we're at the next level. And you usually see that in hindsight. And so we really took stock where what we were as a founding organization, what we were calling, version 0, and then what got us to version 1 with version 1 of the standards, what got us to kind of like version 2 of the organization, or the next phase of our growth, where we started level setting the standards into 2.0, and you're starting to see that. And that's what Stephen was talking about a couple minutes ago. And that as we turn our eye to what's next, we see what gets us to what we would call V3, or phase 3 of our growth, and how we're changing and evolving as an organization. So right from the start at the board level, we are evolving from a board that was very hands-on, very roll-up sleeves. And there's a lot of positive things to that. That's what allowed us to get to the standards and effective standards so quickly. That's what allowed us to get other people involved very quickly, and then rev what we were doing and getting the adoption. So that's all good. But as you grow, you really need to be able to take a step back. You need to see where you're at and what you're doing. And that's where we're seeing that we're at the point, or an inflection, where we need to really become more of a governance board. So we were balancing that, let's say during our teenage years, we were doing some of both of that. And so we spent significant time talking about, with an understanding where we are, where we're at, and where our membership is through all that research, what's really important. And just like with talking about PPC 2.0, how do we really need to take a look at what we're doing and evolve what we're doing in positive ways? And the key takeaways for that is the board is evolving into more of a governance board. That's the first takeaway. Secondly, we're moving past, for the most part, those founders or those early adopters to become more broad. And we're seeing that starting to happen, and the nomination committee is doing a great job there. And then the other thing that goes with that is membership is healthy, membership is growing, revenue is good, that allows us to do more and to do things that allow us to grow beyond just being at all volunteers and being mostly board members to do it. And that's what gives us the luxury to start transitioning what we're doing. So the long and short of it is, it was a great 3 days that we were together. We got a lot done. It set us on our focus on what we're doing into the future, and it's getting us to that 3-year roadmap, which you're going to start hearing more about in the new year.
Awesome. The other thing that went on this past year is there was a new service provider committee that was spun up. So Dave Schultz has been spearheading that. We intend on putting together a directory to make it easier for people to access kind of who can help get rolling with PromoStandards or support in that, if organizations don't have the capabilities to do that in-house. And the other piece of the puzzle, so I think that recognizing that service providers play, a big role in terms of progressing the adoption of the standards kind of moving forward. And there's also been a work group spun up around decorators. So another kind of leg of the stool in this crazy industry that try and bring decorators into the fold as well. So lots of interesting activity in terms of expanding that reach to try and broaden both the creation of kind of new services as needed, as well as the overall adoption of what is in place.
Yeah, if any members are interested, I know the decorator, we've reached out a few times, but it's a very unique world of how the decorators operate. I've kind of had a view into this the last few months. If you're interested, you can reach out to Jessica. Robert is actually from Web Service Pros, heading up that work group right now. So if you have a passion for solving the decorator part of how PromoStandards and the decorators, the services interact with each other, well, that would be huge. So if you're a member and want to volunteer there, this is a great opportunity to get involved, because it's people who are in that world really get it and have a passion for solving their problems. And, they live a very complicated world where there's not a lot of margins and not a lot of, room for error in the decorator community. So I think anywhere where PromoStandards and automations can come into play is a giant win for, like Catherine said, like one leg of the stool of the industry. So yeah, I'm excited to see where that goes next year.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been talk for a long time, all the way back in the days when people were talking about these consolidated invoices, where invoices were coming from different sources, the decorator and the supplier. It's not just decorators that can be involved in this. On the other side of it, Sanmar is getting involved in it because they're dealing a lot with decorators, right? There's the communication of that information, and Alpha Broader has things along those lines too. So if you have a passion for that, like John said, don't think if you're not a contract decorator, you can't get involved. There's certainly, if you have a passion for it and you're dealing with those issues, that work group would love to hear from you.
If anyone has questions, please throw them in the chat. Feel free to put all of us on the hot seat.
I love surprises. Yeah.
I know.
That's
As
your
Amy
favorite,
knows,
Amy.
my biggest thing in the world is I just don't like being surprised. But I will gladly rip through some Q&A today. I do like that. And if your question's really good and we don't understand it, we'll promote you to a panelist so you can ask it live. So you can't hide behind an anonymous question.
And while we're waiting for any questions to appear in the chat, I'll do a broad call out that we are always looking for volunteers across the various committees, particularly MMEC, Membership and Marketing Education Committee, which does an enormous lift across a pretty wide variety of different activities. So if anyone wants to be participating and getting involved, it's a super fun, all of us are a fun group to be working with, but MMEC in particular, I call it on that.
Yeah, and just kind of the way that committees work is like the standards committee gets in person once a year. So PromoStandards is committed to making sure we find that the committees get about 10x done in person. They do on monthly calls. So we tend to try to do most of our committee meetings in the winter in Florida because people who live in Buffalo can appreciate that. So it's a great way to network, and it's a great, don't tell your boss, but it's a great resume builder. They're great ways to communicate and network with people in the industry and really get hands-on with solving the problem. So, I can't speak more, highly of our current committee members on all the committees. It's that's what PromoStandards is. Like Eric mentioned it earlier, PromoStandards used to be the good old days of just like, there was 10 companies and 10 board members that were doing the heavy lift. Like that's not the case anymore. The people doing the heavy lift are the committees, the work, the MMEC, the standards committee, the nomination. You go down the list of all the committee. That's where the action's happening, and it's great to see. So, get involved, reach out. Jessica's always the first point of contact for all that stuff.
It's a lot of fun too. And we keep it loose and fun. There's a lot of camaraderie. You get to meet people and network. It's every single meeting that I've ever been involved in at PromoStandards has been a fun meeting. And that really started with John setting the tone right from the very beginning. So it's all good.
Yeah.
Definitely, if you want a good time and you like what you're doing, get involved.
Yeah, we'll make it fun, I promise.
Yeah,
everyone's being really shy. We don't have any questions in the chat yet.
Well, I could talk a little bit more about some of the changes as you mentioned, Catherine, just like expanding a little bit on the marketing and membership education committee. We have a couple new people joining us in 2024, specifically around marketing. So it's very exciting. And then that way we can kind of put that off a little bit to the side, do some more of those cool things with membership that we wanted with the volunteers that we have. And then we're still looking for someone that will, go along each month with us on the education journey and maybe do a session. So John gets a month off. So if you're interested in even talking about doing an education session or even a special session on something that you would our members would find interesting, we're always open to that too.
All right. She doesn't know I'm going to do this, but I'm going to put her on the spot. So Becky's here on this call. So just so you know, I say kind of a shout out to the volunteers. working with Amy and I is like herding cats and like trying to get this education session together every single month. It really is Becky who makes this happen. We just sit here and front this thing. She's doing the actual like sending out the invites, making sure we show up, making sure there's actually something to talk about and that we're actually prepared each month. So huge shout out to Becky. Thank you, Becky, for doing all that, because I know we're not easy to work with. So you're
I
crushing
think
it there. So
the team you're looking for is the adult.
Yeah.
yes, yes. I know it's great. Like I know that I'm going to have my calendar invite for the planning for it. I know it's going to be there for 2 o'clock on the third Tuesday. So I mean so the volunteering doesn't always have to be as like glamorous as writing a standard. A lot of this is just making sure we get stuff done, right? And
Yeah.
then so Becky kind of gets my award for making sure we get stuff done. So thank you, Becky, for that. Another 12 months of this, Becky. You're not getting off the hook next year.
We're ready. We're ready.
What else?
Awesome. We might be able to wrap up early if there's no questions or anything else that we've missed.
Yeah, I mean, I looked the there's a Q&A. I love it. Oh, Tony coming in hot. Okay, it's going to take us the next 5 minutes to
This
read
is an
this.
essay, Tony.
Better read that.
Hey, is there? Okay, this is great. So this is going to open up a can of worms. I'm glad we're gonna talk about here. So
Let's do
Tony, if you read the I guess the cliff notes to Tony's thing is that there's really there's obviously distributor, service providers, consuming supplier endpoints, but there's no really way to, I guess, as Tony would put it, publicly shame the supplier about quirks with their. So I know, Catherine, when we met in person, this came up, and anybody can allude on this, but we're really 2024 is the year where we make that leap into. Earlier, we were trying to stay out of, policing endpoints and, giving feedback and really just stepping on the supplier's toes. But that ends in 2024. So does anybody want to take on the kind of the feedback from our board meeting of the direction we're going to start leaning into for how we're going to kind of address this in the future?
Well, this is
Eric
one
or
of
Catherine?
this is one of the things that came up in the annual planning meeting. And this was the power of the survey with such strong feedback is like any person or any organization, you have your lens that you look things through, and you have your biases as well. And when you strip all that away and you hear the unvarnished feedback from the membership, you get exactly what Tony just said. It's one of the things. It's, again, those tale of two cities to bring the arc across. So it's like, we love PromoStandards. Hey, we want more, right? That's what you want, right? That's exactly what it is. We're all growing. And that's one of the things that the board came to the conclusion with is like, we were never, and you heard it at the Tech Summit this past year, we're never in the business of data. We don't own that. The data is the realm of the trading partners that are producing it. The realities are a standard gets judged on how easily you can plug it in and use it. It doesn't matter if it really is part of the standard, you get judged on that. And so it's the same thing when you use your cell phone. The standards, the interoperability standards can work great, but if you use that phone and you make a call and it's in effect staticky or it's dropping out, you're blaming the standard when it may not have anything to do with that at all. It could be the weather. But at the end of the day, it's failing to live up to the expectation of interoperability. And so data is doing that to a degree as well. So Tony, we hear it loud and clear. The board talked about it in our annual planning meeting. We understand that we're not necessarily the arbiters of data, but we have to work towards finding ways to get standards at the data level stronger. And that starts with coming up with not only best practices like we have, but starting to come up with some self-assessments like you see in the payment card industry. And that will start us down the path. And that is a journey as well. So there's learning opportunities there. And as we learn, then we can work towards things like certification. We're going to be talking about things like, what is that forum? Do we want to be as strong as scoring, like we see credit scoring and performance scoring in the rest of the industry. And where do we take that? And depending who you are, what your role is in the industry, you have different thoughts on that. But at the end of the day, everybody's in agreement, no matter what their role is, that we want to make sure that the standards are as effective as possible all the way down to the data level.
Yeah, I think just the one piece that I would add there is just to ensure that everyone's clear on kind of language, that policing is definitely not what the organization is wanting to do and the role we wanted to play within this, but certification and being able to ensure that a high bar is being kept, so that similar to kind of a good housekeeping seal of approval concept, that there is kind of validity that the data is going to be usable and good, because that's where it all kind of starts at the beginning.
Yeah, and what we're doing, we're building out a checklist of, here's what it means to be a PromoStandards compliant self-attesting, process of, hey, we have a secure credentialing process. We adhere to best practices on these. We're building out that framework in order for you to be just a good standing PromoStandards endpoint hosting member. You need to self-attest that you are doing these best practices, doing these things properly. And then if the feedback comes back that might not be the case, then we're going to have to, we'll dive into that. But I think we're going to start setting expectations of what it means. You can't just, I heard the term last week at a meeting in Florida, to show up and throw up. The days of just putting an endpoint out there and just hoping for the best. It's going to be time to ensure, and the distributors and service providers have been living the downside of this for years, is we need to deliver on quality data. So we're gonna start, and this is all going to be rolled out in very heavy detail at the Tech Summit. But it's going to be a checkpoint, like going down the list of kind of what it would be like a PCI compliance, that type of self-attesting, that you're doing these 27 top things in order to be a top PromoStandards hosting member. So we're looking forward to it. It's a first step. Like Catherine said, we're not in the business of policing. That's just not the role of our standards body, but we are in the business of making sure that we're representing high quality, accurate data across the supply chain. So that's really going to be the focus as we move forward. It's getting that house in order.
Yeah, crawl, walk, run, though. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's a journey, right? Because you want to do it right. You don't want to overshoot it. You don't want to upset people in the process, and you don't want to set a bar that's not attainable, but all at the same time. And yeah, we do that exactly the way you're saying, Amy. We got to crawl first, and we're definitely going to start doing that in 2024.
That's a great question.
Thanks, Tony, for dropping that in there. I almost didn't want to read all that Q&A and put you on the spot and make you ask in person, but I think we got the gist of what you were asking. So thanks for that. Anything else? All right. Yeah, this is exciting.
Just before we wrap up, just a couple of things. Another reiteration, Becky, thank you for all of your work on all of this and education kind of in general, and specifically for hurting John and Amy. We're all grateful for you for that. John in particular, not so much Amy. She's far more
Amy's got her
organized.
stuff together. Yeah. Thank you,
I
Becky.
don't know. It's I don't know. I think I'm picking up some bad habits.
You're spending too much time with John, that's why.
Yeah, John can rub off on you in all ways.
I'm here. That's all we can ask for.
Another big shout out to Jessica, who is our fabulous admin. She did such an amazing job of keeping all of us organized, and for all the nudges and prompts and Slack to make sure that we're attending education events, that we know what's going on in terms of overall activity within the community, and keeping everything organized from a membership perspective. So Jessica, a huge thank you for all of your work. And she's coming on camera, yay!
She's alive. Jessica's got like a 3-to-1 message to response ratio, where she sends three messages and gets 1 response, and that's just
I'm just the squeaky wheel. Just consider me the squeaky wheel.
But that's what makes us all work. And a big shout out and thank you to all of the volunteers. This organization would be nothing as being a volunteer organization, a volunteer run organization. We would not be able to get anything done without the huge amount of effort and hours that all the volunteers put in across all the various committees. And to my fellow board members, a enormous thank you for all the work that each of you do every day. And to Eric, that has played an enormous role in the organization as chair for the past year. You have been instrumental and have provided fantastic leadership. So a big thank you for all of your work.
Yeah, couldn't do it with all of you and everybody else. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. All right.
And with that, I wish
Great
everyone
job.
happy holidays. Looking forward to seeing everyone in person, both either in Vegas or at the Tech Summit in February.
Sounds good. Thanks,
See you,
everyone.
everybody. Have a good one.
Have a good one. Take care.